Hey, it's Dave here. In this video, I'm going to walk you through setting up Frigate inside Home Assistant using the official Frigate add-on and then linking it to Home Assistant using the Frigate integration from HACS, where you get your cameras set up for object detection even if you're starting with something simple like a USB webcam or an app from your Android phone such as IPCam, so you can start experimenting straight away before deciding whether you want to splash out on more hardware later. Just to be clear, we're not covering how to run Frigate on a completely separate piece of hardware in this video, but if you ever wanted to do that, you'll still use the exact same HACS integration to link it to Home Assistant. Today's focus is entirely on the add-on method because it's quicker to get up and running. We'll cover the prerequisites like installing MQTT so you've got everything ready before you dive in. Alright, let's get started. So what exactly is Frigate? Frigate is an open source network video recorder built for real-time object detection. It can spot people, cars, pets, and more, and it talks to Home Assistant over MQTT so you can trigger automations based on what it sees. In short, it makes your cameras a lot smarter, a lot more interactive, and slightly judgmental if you point one at the fridge. Now here's where some people get confused. There's actually two parts to think about: Frigate add-on versus Frigate integration from HACS. Frigate itself can either run inside Home Assistant using the Frigate add-on, or it can run separately on its own hardware like a Raspberry Pi or another server. Frigate integration from HACS, this is required in both cases. As the name suggests, it integrates Frigate into Home Assistant, adds a user interface, and converts Frigate's detected objects into entities that you can use for automations. In this video, we're using the add-on to run Frigate directly inside Home Assistant, then adding the HACS integration to connect the two. It's the fastest way to start testing. But remember, running Frigate inside Home Assistant can use more CPU and RAM, so some people eventually move to separate hardware for performance. When it comes to cameras, you want ones that supports RTSP or ONVIF. These are common streaming standards that make your camera work with Frigate and other software. If you're shopping online, check the specs for supports RTSP or supports ONVIF. If you see that, you're good to go. Before we dive in, there's one key piece we need to set up first: MQTT, the messaging system Frigate uses to send events to Home Assistant. If you've already got MQTT up and running, you can skip ahead. But if not, we'll quickly install the Mosquitto broker add-on, set up the integration, and get everything chatting nicely. Without MQTT, Frigate can't tell Home Assistant, hey, I saw something, and that's kind of the whole point. I'll take you through it step by step, so by the end of this section, we'll have everything in place and ready for the fun part, actually seeing Frigate detect stuff. To install the Mosquitto add-on, we're going to head over to Settings, then we're going to go to Add-ons, and then if you select Add-on Store and do a search for either Mosquitto or MQTT, and then this is the one you want, Mosquitto Broker. Then you're going to select Install. Once that's installed, I would check Watchdog, which just means it restarts if it crashes, and leave Start on Boot checked if it isn't already. Then you're going to head over to the Configuration tab, and we're pretty much just going to leave those settings as it is. You've got this logon section here, but that's primarily if you want to use a specific logon for Mosquitto, and I'm just going to be using my Home Assistant login. So I'm going to leave those settings as they are. And in case you're wondering how to create a login in Home Assistant, just go to Settings, then look for People, and select Add Person. I'll give it a name, and I'll call it MQTT Frigate. Then if you check Allow Login, and I'm going to give it the username MQTT_Frigate, just so it's relatable, and then come up with a password. If you leave local access only unchecked, now because I'm actually using Frigate locally, I probably could check it, but I'm going to leave it as it is. And for administrator, you definitely want that unchecked because there's no need for it to have administrative rights because it's purely for MQTT purposes. And then we're just going to finish off by clicking Create. And then just click Create again. And that's that new user done. Now we're going to add the MQTT integration. So if you go to Settings, then go to Devices and Services, select Add Integration, and do a search for MQTT, which is this one here. And the one you want is just MQTT. And for the choice of how do you want to connect to the MQTT broker, if you choose the top one, which is Use Official Mosquitto MQTT Broker, which is what we installed earlier. And that will now say Created Configuration for Mosquitto MQTT Broker, where you can click Finish. Once you've installed the Mosquitto broker and integrated MQTT, the next step is to install the Frigate add-on. Go to Settings, go to Add-ons, then select Add-on Store, and if you go to those three dots on the top, select Repositories, and you're going to paste the following GitHub address, and then click Add. Then click Close. And you'll need to give Home Assistant a restart before you can see this in the add-on store. So if we just go to Developer Tools, whilst we're at it, we just check the configuration's fine, which it is. And then we give Home Assistant a restart. Once Home Assistant has restarted, if you go back into Settings, then go to Add-ons, select Add-on Store, and now if you do a search for Frigate, you should be presented with various options, and the one that you want is Frigate Full Access. Before I go any further, I'm just going to give you a quick overview on the different variants. So Frigate is the main one, which uses the standard FFmpeg and tension flow light for object detection. Then you've got Frigate Full Access, which is more or less exactly the same, but if you're going to be using one of these hardware accelerators like the Coral USB or M.2, then you're going to want the full access. But just to be clear, you must make sure that protection mode is turned off from the add-on, otherwise it won't work. Then you've got the beta releases, which as you could imagine, they're just early releases of the above. Moving over to the special variants, you've got Frigate Halo RT, which is for AI accelerator, a little bit like the Coral USB or M2, but just a different variation. Then for Frigate, old x86 64 CPU without AVX, which is Advanced Vector Extensions. This is for much older CPUs lacking such support. And then the last one, Frigate Proxy, you might actually want to have this one as well. This is basically just an add-on for a camera stream only, so it won't take advantage of the object detection. It's just if you've got multiple cameras and you want to maybe have a link on your sidebar where you can click on that and then open all those streams, that's where the Frigate Proxy comes in useful. Okay, so let's choose Frigate Full Access. And if you click Install, once that's installed, if you check Watchdog, so it automatically restarts if it crashes. Optionally, you can also check Show in Sidebar. So if I just quickly zoom out, you can then see it appears here. Now, what protection mode means is if you're using perhaps one of these hardware accelerators, like these Coral USB sticks, they won't work with protection mode turned on. So you'll need to uncheck protection mode. If you're not using one of them, you can just leave it as it is. Now, another thing from the documentation, if I just scroll down, it does actually say here about creating a frigate.yaml file in the root of your Home Assistant directory. Now, while it does say that, I have actually found that as soon as you start Frigate for the first time, it actually appears to automatically create that file anyway, and then you can edit it afterwards. So you don't actually have to create that file, it's just you'll have to edit it. So I'm now going to start it. And you'll probably find if you actually go through the logs, it will say something about that config file not existing. You see here, no config file found, and then it automatically creates the file for you. And in case you're wondering where the frigate.yaml file is located, if you go into File Editor, and it's actually located in the same path where the configuration.yaml is saved, which is this file here. And if I just open it, it will just create this basic setup file, which will look something like this. Now let's come out of that, and we're going to launch the Frigate user interface, which I've already added to the sidebar, which is here. And from this settings icon here, you can actually navigate to the frigate.yaml file to make configuration changes. But for some reason, when using the Frigate add-on, which means it's installed locally on Home Assistant, sometimes when I navigate through these settings, they don't appear to actually do anything. I'm just going to demonstrate now. So if I click on Configuration Editor, which should open the frigate.yaml file, it doesn't appear to be doing anything. So I'm just going to try it again. Okay, and now it works. It seems to be a little bit random, and other times I've found that if you actually just open up a new tab and then go back, sometimes then it opens. So if you do find yourself running into that headache where you're clicking on this settings icon and trying to go to here or any of these settings, either just keep trying it a few times or open a new tab, and it seems to eventually work. It could well be that's just a performance issue when running it locally on Home Assistant, but that's one of the issues I've been experiencing. So if you do find these buttons or menus aren't working, just try them a couple times, open a new tab, go back, and then it eventually just seems to work. There's another setting you'll also want to look at, is the one that's just called Settings. And if I go into this one, again, it's doing that funny thing. So I'm just going to quickly open another tab, go back. Let's try it again. Okay, now it's magically working again. So you've got various options here which you can choose from, starting from UI settings, explore settings, camera settings. You've got masks and zones. That's particularly useful if perhaps you've got a camera pointing at a large area and you want to sort of blank out a certain section so it doesn't trigger false detections or detections that you're not interested in. Maybe you've got some trees in the background. Then you've got motion tuner. This just allows you to really fine tune that level of sensitivity. And then you've got debug, gives you a few more choices. And one which might catch you out is users. And just to be clear, this user admin is the user to get into the Frigate add-on. Now, because I've installed and configured the Frigate add-in in Home Assistant, it will automatically just log in with that credentials, but you can always add a new user if you need to. But just to make it clear, this isn't the MQTT user. So there are two users. You've got the Frigate add-in user, which will default to admin and some password. And then you'll need a user account for MQTT so it can communicate with Home Assistant. Now we're going to need to edit the frigate.yaml file for this setup to work. And there's some really good documentation you should have a look through over here. One thing to note is it does mention that you may have a frigate.yaml file or a frigate.yml file. And if both of those files do exist, it will take priority over the frigate.yaml file. Now, just in case you're wondering, when you install the Home Assistant Frigate add-on and launch it for the first time, the file that it created was the frigate.yaml file, so you shouldn't really run into any problems. But I thought I'd just bring this up because if you are running some sort of a legacy environment and you had all your config files existing in the frigate.yml file, and then it goes and creates the frigate.yaml file, you may have to just sort of transfer those settings across. Another good reference that's worth having a read is this page here called For Config Reference. And as I scroll down, it's going to give you a list of the YAML configuration examples that you can work with. And finally, there's another reference that's worth having a look here, where it lists all the available objects that you can use in terms of object detection, which might give you some ideas in terms of automations that you're going to want to be using. And if I just scroll down a little bit further, one of the objects it can detect is toilet, which has given me a really good idea for an automation.
Afternoon, sir. It looks like you're taking a number 2. Would you like me to light a match when you have finished?
Okay, maybe that might be a bad idea to automate. Let's go back into the Frigate config file and we're going to initially set up the MQTT connection between Frigate and Home Assistant. So we're going to go into this settings icon and then click Configuration Editor. One other thing to note is when you make changes from within the Frigate user interface, once you've changed this code here, you've then got the option Save and Restart. And what that does is it will save the changes and restart the Frigate add-on. If you were to edit this from File Editor and open the frigate.yaml and then save changes, you will then need to go into the Frigate add-on and restart it for those changes to apply. So the first thing we're going to change is this MQTT section, so it references the MQTT broker and the credentials. So enabled now needs to be changed from false to true. Then we're going to add host. And I'm just going to put in my Home Assistant IP. Now I'm going to put in the username and the password. And this is the part where it comes in quite useful to have a dedicated user for this MQTT connection, because it will make your triaging a lot easier for confirming connection is successful between Frigate and Home Assistant. Now I'm going to save the changes and restart the Frigate add-on. And while that's happening, I'm just going to navigate over to the MQTT broker. And then just go to the logs, and we're looking for something containing the wording Frigate. And that's promising. You can see from here it's got new client connected and it references Frigate. And you can see here it's got MQTT_Frigate. So we know we've got those credentials correct and we know they're working. Now I'm going to intentionally sabotage this just so you can see the error message if you had those credentials wrong. So I'm going to go back into Frigate, go to Configuration Editor. It's doing its thing where it doesn't like working, so I'm just going to try a couple times. Okay, now we're back in. Now I'm just going to add an extra character just so that the password's wrong. Now I'm going to save and restart again. Quickly go back into the MQTT broker. Go to logs, and I'm expecting it's going to give me some sort of an error message, which, yep, you can see here, it's now got client Frigate disconnected, not authorized. So if you do see that message, there's a good chance you've probably put in the credentials wrong. Now we're going to start adding some cameras, and at the time of this recording, I don't have an official IP camera that I can use. So I'm actually going to use an app on my phone, and this might come in useful for other people who don't already have the hardware and just want to have a quick go at Frigate. So if you've got an Android mobile, download an app called IP Webcam, and I will link a description directly to this app if you can't find it. And once you've got that installed, if you open it, and we're going to go to local broadcasting and then select HTTP and RTSP ports. And at the moment, it's going to default to 8080, which might be perfectly fine. But if you have got something else that's conflicting with that port, you might want to change that. Otherwise, just leave that as it is. Going back to the main menu again, another setting you're going to want to go into is video preferences. From here, we're just going to change the main camera. Because I'm using my mobile, it's going to default to the rear-facing camera. And for this demonstration, I actually want to be using the front-facing camera. So I'm just going to select main camera and then just change it to front-facing. And then back to the main menu again, if you click on those three dots on the top right, and we're now going to click Start Server, and that should take you to a page like this, and on the bottom of the screen you can see it's got the HTTP and the HTTPS address of your server, which has the IP address followed by port 8080. And if you click on the top left where it says Help, and then from more IPs, we're going to select RTSP, which is the middle option. And it's going to give you another list of URLs, but these are RTSP URLs, which are going to come in quite handy. In this example, I'm going to choose the one highlighted, and it'll be typed as I've detailed below in red, where it's got RTSP : / the IP address, the port, and then it's got the / h264_ulaw.spd. So just make note of that address because you're going to need to input it into the configuration file shortly. Now I'm going to make some changes to the config file to add that camera, enable object detection, add some objects on the list to detect, along with some other tweaks. If you go to Settings and then select Configuration Editor, sometimes you have to click on it a couple of times. You can go into File Editor and select frigate.yaml, which will take you to the same file. Now I start off by changing the name of the camera, and I'm just going to call it IPCam. Then we're going to change the path of the URL to the RTSP address, which is what you would have got from the IPCam software. And yes, those of you with eagle eyes, you might notice the IP address is actually different. It just changed from the recording earlier. Now we're going to change detect from false to true. And I'm going to add another setting for the frames per second. If you don't specify this, it will default to 5. However, because I'm running this on quite a low spec PC, I'm actually going to leave it on 5 anyway. But just to make you aware, the higher you increase the frames per second, the greater the accuracy for detecting moving objects. So I'd start off something low, and if your PC can render it without too much issues, then you're going to want to bump that number up, maybe to something like 15 frames per second. The same thing applies to the resolution. The higher it is, the higher quality it'll be to render, and it will improve the accuracy, but it's also going to put more strain on your resources. So it depends on the PC you're running it off. I'm also going to bump those settings down to something lower like that. Now we're going to add some objects to track. Now, something to watch out for: while there are loads of items which can be tracked, only list the items that you want to track. The more items you list, the more strain it's going to put on your resources, and it might max out your CPU. Now, before I save those changes, there's another setting which is advised, which is to specify the detectors. So if I head over to this web page here, and I'm just going to scroll down, it's going to start mentioning things like hardware detectors, and it's going to give you the YAML. So for example, if you're using one of these USB Coral devices, it's already got the YAML that you can just copy and paste in. Now, the PC I'm using is a very old HP ProDesk 600, and it doesn't have USB 3. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get this device working. If I just scroll down a little bit further, you can see it also references the Coral M.2 accelerators as well, along with the code for you. And I'm going to go down a little bit further to what I've been using. Now, because I'm using a very low spec PC, I'm going to use this detector here. And if I scroll down a bit further, it's got the code that you need to copy. And just to remove any confusion, this width and height needs to be exactly as it's referenced. It's not a scenario of, oh, if you want it to improve accuracy, you just bump the numbers up or you put them down. This is based on that detector. So make sure those settings are exactly as they are. I'm just going to copy that piece of code. Then I'm going to come back out, go back into the Frigate, and I'm just going to paste this code just underneath the MQTT section. So it looks like that. One mistake I made earlier is I previously only entered this part, but I didn't put this part in, which goes along with it. Another thing to mention is the device is going to default to using GPU. Again, I'm using a very old PC, so I'm going to change that so it'll be CPU. You may need to do the same. Otherwise, if you do have a reasonable graphics card, then GPU will be preferred. Now I'm just going to save the changes and apply. Now, from those of you who made the changes using something like File Editor to open frigate.yaml, when you save it from there, you will have to manually go into Frigate add-on and just restart it for changes to apply. I'm now going to click Save. click restart, and just wait for it to launch up again. Now, for those of you who are running Home Assistant in Proxmox, in my setup, I initially only allocated 2 cores under the processor setting, which is working perfectly fine. But when I started to experiment with Frigate, I found the CPU was being used up quite a bit for the detection. If that's the same for yourself and you're able to, I'm just going to show you where that setting is. So if you just expand Proxmox, select your Home Assistant VM, and if you go to the Hardware tab and select Processors, and then I just changed the cores from 2 to 4. Now that's assuming that the PC you're using has those cores available, but if it is set to 2 and you're able to bump it up a little bit more, that will help. Then you're just going to click OK. And you'll notice here the text is in orange, and that's basically just telling you that you need to restart it for changes to apply. So if you then go to Shutdown and select Reboot, and then click Yes, then when your Home Assistant was restarted, it's got those extra 2 cores, and that did seem to help in terms of performance. While that's restarting, I just thought I'd show you a really cool feature from the Frigate documentation. If you go to the following page, you'll see there's this button here called Ask AI, and when you click on that, what's really cool is this AI is trained specifically on the Frigate documentation. So if you're having any trouble, this is a really good place to start in asking it questions. And one of the features I really like is if you are having some issues, perhaps with your YAML file or performance issues, you can actually ask it a question about your YAML and paste it into the chat, and it will analyze it and give you some feedback. Just be careful before doing that though. If you do have any sensitive passwords or IP addresses, just change them with a sort of fake address or fake password before doing so. But I'm really impressed with this because I've had it where I was running into performance issues and I said, is there anything you can do to help me? It told me about changing the frames per second to a lower number, reducing the resolution, and adding some hardware acceleration. So if I just quickly show you, I'm just going to ask it a sample question that I previously asked. So I'm just asking it, I'm having some performance issues. Can you tweak the configuration file to improve? So I'm just going to paste it in. And straight away, it's just having a scan through, it's analyzing that configuration file for me. And you can see straight away it's pulling up your frames per second is a little bit high. It's mentioning about hardware acceleration, unnecessary object tracking. So this is really, really good triaging. So if you are having some issues, I couldn't recommend any more just hopping over to this website and just asking it the questions directly in this section because it's really impressive. Now that the Frigate server has been rebooted, I'm just going to test object detection and see how it works. I'm going to full screen this camera feed to make it a bit clearer. So I'm going to start off with a banana, and this seems to be the one that picks up, you can see straight away, that's detected that banana really quickly. Now let's try the fork. It's thinking about it. Just going to turn it around. Oh, it's done something. Okay, now that's found that. Now the spoon and the knife seem to be a bit random. It doesn't seem to be very reliable. No, it doesn't like that. Let's just turn it around. Oh, it thinks it's a fork. That's interesting. Now let's try a wooden spoon. Oh, and it thinks that's a knife. Huh. Okay, let's try a knife. What does that think it is? Does not like it. Let's just turn it around, give it a chance to to analyze. Some of these cutlery, I do find it doesn't work. Fork seems to be pretty good. Banana is almost immediate, and person's really good as well. So no, it doesn't like the knife. I'm just going to try my hand because that should be recognized. See, that's really fast. So certain objects, let's try the banana again. Again, that is almost immediate when you see it recognizing banana. And we just try the fork. Yep, it's found the fork, so that's really quick. But the spoon and the knife does not seem to work too well with this. So it's still showing the fork. Let's just see if it detects it. No, does not like it. So when it works, it is very good. For people, it's fantastic. Banana, really quick. Fork, really quick. But knife and spoon, for whatever reason, it seems to struggle. Bearing in mind, I do have the settings very low, 5 frames per second, low resolution. Possibly if I bump them up, it might be a little bit better. Or maybe it's just the poor lighting conditions I'm working in. But the image does look pretty clear, so I'm surprised it's struggling.
Now, for those of you who want to use a USB webcam instead of an IP cam and are using Home Assistant in Proxmox, I'm just going to show you how it's done. So if you expand Proxmox, then go to your Home Assistant VM. If you go to the hardware section, then you're going to click Add, select USB device, then select USB port, and here I can see HD webcam C920, which is the one I want. Click Add. Then you're going to go back into Home Assistant and you're going to want to have advanced mode enabled. So if I just go into my account and then scroll down, and you should see here advanced mode. Just make sure that's checked, otherwise you won't be able to see the device under all hardware. Now we're going to go to settings, go to system, select hardware, select all hardware, and you're just going to scroll down until you see your webcam in here. I know mine's right at the bottom. And I can see here it's got video 0 and it's referencing that HD Pro webcam, and it's also got what I'm looking for is the device path where it's got /dev/video 0. I found that an easier way to identify the path. There is some official documentation from the Frigate webpage which references a series of commands you can run instead in shell. While I did get these working, it's a bit fiddly, and I found the GUI version of just navigating through Home Assistant a little bit easier to explain, so I thought I'd skip this part out. What you will need to do though is this example code. You are going to need to add this into your YAML, and then you'll add this as well, which basically adds your camera. The part that you might need to change is this section here, where you can see it's got video equals 0. That might need to equal 1, 2, 3, whatever the device path equals. And if you couldn't for some reason find a device path, you might find that just works anyway, and you could just try it again with the next number up and keep trying until it works.
Now I'm going to copy this part of the code, go back into Frigate, go to Settings, Configuration Editor, and we're just going to paste that first part just above cameras. Then we're going to go back to that page, and we're going to miss that key cameras, and we're just going to copy this part here because I've already got one camera showing. So copy that.
And I'm just going to paste it here. So that way we've got the first camera, which is IP cam, and then we've got the second camera, which is this one. I don't want record, so I'm just going to remove that part of the role. Detection's currently turned off. We'll turn that on later. I just want to make sure that the camera feed is working. So I'm going to leave most of the settings as they are, but you can pretty much just copy parts of the previous camera and then paste them here. So if I did want to enable tracking, I can just copy that. And now that's pasted underneath. So this is the part which you may have to change, where it's got video equals 0, but I already know that is that value. Now I'm going to save and restart. And once it's finished, I should now see 2 cameras. Yep. Not very clear which one's which, but I know that the left one here is the IP cam and the right one here is the USB cam. Very boring pictures, but it's connected to the host, which is running Proxmox, and it's just aiming at the wall. So we know that is working. Now, if for some reason you've got all those settings correct and you still can't see that USB webcam, there's a chance you might need to turn off protected mode. If you go to settings, then go to add-ons, and then go to Frigate for access, and you'll see this checkbox here called protection mode. You may need to turn that off, and then once you've turned that off, you'll just need to restart it for it to take effect. I'm just going to turn it back on because I didn't need it to be off. All right, so the camera's working, object detection's working, but right now, Home Assistant can't really see those detections as entities. That's where the Frigate integration comes in, and it's going to make automations a whole lot easier. Okay, so the next step is to install the HACS Frigate integration. Whether your Frigate server is running from the add-on or on separate hardware, the process is the same. If you don't already have HACS set up, I've made a video on that earlier. I'll link it in the description. So if we navigate over to HACS, then if we do a search for Frigate, and then click on this one here, then click on download, and then select download again. Then hop over to settings, go to devices and services, go to add integration, and do a search for Frigate. Select that option. Now, because I'm using the Frigate add-on, the URL is going to be something like it's referenced here. And if I just scroll down, you'll see it appears to have already pre-populated that address, followed by the port. However, just to make you aware, this might not be the exact URL, because if I just click submit, I'm going to get an error message. And you'll see here it's got failed to connect. If I just open up another tab, and I'm just going to go to Frigate here, you'll notice that is the part of the URL, but right at the end it's got -FA. So that's what it should actually be saying. Otherwise it's not going to work. So I'm just going to copy that. Now I'm going to go back, just close that tab.
zoom back in here, and this part is actually the same. All I actually need is just to add that extra -FA. Because I'm running it locally, I don't actually need to put those user credentials, so I'm going to leave the rest as it is. Now I'm going to click submit. And now it's proceeded a little bit further. And you'll see it's actually showing two devices. The first device is that IP cam, which is a physical camera I'm using, and the one below is the actual Frigate server. We're just going to click skip and finish and just add those devices. And then you can see here, it's going to show you the Frigate integration entities. So if I just click on one of these, this one will be the Frigate server. And if I just go back, this one's the IP cam. And now all of a sudden you can see all of these sensors. So it's got like the fork, the banana. There should be spoon if I scroll down. So you've got knife, and then you can see spoon. So all those objects that I've previously added that can be detectable are now starting to become entities. And that's really helpful because those entities I can now use for automations. So if I just click on one of these, let's just click on spoon, you can see it's got a photograph of the spoon. And if I click on that settings icon, you've also got the entity ID, which again is extremely handy. At this stage, most of the hard work's done now, and it's really just diving into creating your own automations. So I thought I'd wrap this video up with a demo automation using object detection. Now it's using 3 different entities. One is a banana, the other is a person, and the last one is a glass of wine. So the way it will work is if it detects a person and it detects a banana, it will assume you're eating something healthy and give you a positive comment. If it detects a person and a glass of wine, it's not going to be happy. So here's those 3 entities. And then this is the function node, which is basically just setting a variable so it knows that banana has been detected. And then it's going to have this function node here, which is then going to look at these variables. And based on the condition, it's either going to say, good, you're eating a healthy banana, or it's going to tell me to put the wine down. And then that's going to be triggered to my Amazon Alexa. So I'm just going to skip to a live demo of this working.
Good. You are eating a healthy banana. If I catch drinking wine, I'll post on Facebook to humiliate you.
Okay. Cheers.
Put the wine down, or I'll post on Facebook.
Okay, all right. And that's it. You've now got Frigate up and running in Home Assistant and detecting objects like a pro. Hopefully, this helped you get started without too much head scratching, and maybe even gave you a few ideas for automations you can try next. If you found this useful, give it a thumbs up so YouTube knows I'm not just talking to myself, and don't forget to subscribe for more Home Assistant tips and tricks. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments section or join my Discord channel to discuss them further. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.